What you're about to hear is the part of history that textbooks mention briefly or avoid completely. It's the uncomfortable question most people never stop to ask. If ancient civilizations were so advanced, so powerful, and so organized, why did so many of them collapse with shocking speed? This story explores the fall of ancient civilizations whose real causes were far more complex than the simple explanations passed down in classrooms. These societies did not disappear because they were weak or primitive, nor because they lacked intelligence or innovation. In many cases, they were the most sophisticated systems humanity had ever built at the time, with advanced urban planning, trade networks, and governance structures. Their people understood engineering, astronomy, agriculture, and social organization at a level unmatched by their contemporaries. The illusion of sudden collapse comes from how history records endings, not from how those endings actually unfolded. Their downfall was not sudden in cause, only in appearance. At the time these civilizations thrived, the world was shaped by survival, hierarchy, belief, and power in ways that are difficult to imagine today. Nature was not something to be controlled through technology, but something to be negotiated with through ritual, planning, and adaptation. Agriculture determined political authority, water access shaped social stability, and seasonal predictability defined economic survival. When rains failed or rivers shifted, entire belief systems were shaken. Food surpluses vanished, labor systems broke down, and trust in leadership eroded. When those foundations cracked, even the strongest empires became vulnerable to forces they could not command. Most historians agree on the basic facts of these collapses as seen in the archaeological record. Cities were abandoned, sometimes gradually and sometimes in waves that spanned generations. Trade routes that once connected distant regions fell silent, cutting off essential goods and knowledge exchange. Writing systems disappeared, not because language was lost, but because centralized institutions that maintained literacy collapsed. Populations declined through migration, famine, and social fragmentation. Yet these visible outcomes only describe what happened, not why it happened. They fail to explain why systems that had survived wars, rebellions, and political instability for centuries suddenly stopped functioning altogether. The common narrative suggests that ancient civilizations fell because of invasions, corruption, or internal decay. While such factors did play a role in many cases, modern archaeological and climate research up to 2025 shows they were often symptoms rather than root causes. Environmental data, soil analysis, and climate reconstructions reveal long-term stress building beneath the surface. The real forces were slower, quieter, and far more dangerous precisely because they unfolded over generations. By the time their consequences became visible, meaningful intervention was no longer possible. Behind official records and visible ruins were invisible pressures accumulating year after year. Environmental stress reduced crop yields and weakened food security long before famine became obvious. Shifting climate patterns altered rainfall cycles, making agriculture increasingly unreliable. Overuse of natural resources stripped landscapes of resilience, leaving societies exposed to even minor environmental shocks. At the same time, rigid social systems resisted reform, prioritizing tradition and authority over adaptation. Leaders made decisions based on preserving short-term stability rather than ensuring long-term survival, and those choices compounded until collapse became unavoidable. One of the most powerful examples of this process is the Indus Valley civilization. For decades, its disappearance puzzled historians because it lacked the usual signs of violent collapse. There was no evidence of invasion, no mass graves, and no widespread destruction of cities. Urban centers appeared orderly, suggesting people left by choice rather than by force. Recent climate studies now show that prolonged droughts altered river systems critical to agriculture and trade. As water sources shifted and crop reliability declined, populations slowly migrated away. The civilization didn't fall in flames, it faded under sustained environmental pressure. A similar pattern appears in the collapse of the classic Maya civilization. Once thought to be caused primarily by warfare or political failure, new evidence reveals a far more complex process. Population growth placed increasing strain on food production systems that depended heavily on stable rainfall. Forests were cleared faster than they could regenerate, reducing soil fertility and local climate regulation. Rainfall patterns became increasingly unpredictable, leading to repeated agricultural shortfalls. As resources dwindled, competition intensified, political legitimacy weakened, and conflict followed. The collapse was not a single event. Entire political systems unraveled as environmental stress overwhelmed existing institutions. As pressure increased, leaders across these civilizations faced impossible choices with no good outcomes. Rationing food risked rebellion and loss of authority, while maintaining appearances delayed necessary action. Relocating populations threatened political legitimacy and social order, yet doing nothing worsened suffering. In many cases, ruling elites insulated themselves from hardship while common people absorbed the cost. This growing inequality eroded social cohesion and trust. When people stopped believing that the system served them, cooperation collapsed. That imbalance accelerated societal breakdown far more effectively than any invading army. There is a point in every collapsing system where recovery is no longer possible. Water reservoirs drop below sustainable levels, making agriculture unreliable regardless of effort. Trade networks become unstable as scarcity disrupts exchange and cooperation. Trust in leadership disappears when promises no longer match reality. Once this threshold is crossed, even small shocks, minor droughts, brief conflicts, short harvest failures can trigger massive collapse. What appears sudden in historical records is often the final visible stage of a long, silent decline that unfolded over generations. The deeper meaning behind these collapses is not technological failure, but human behavior under prolonged stress. Fear narrows decision-making and encourages defensive thinking. Denial delays adaptation until options disappear. Short-term thinking repeatedly overrides rational long-term planning. Societies do not fall because people lack intelligence or capability. They fall because systems reward immediate stability, political legitimacy, and tradition over flexibility and survival. Collapse is rarely a failure of knowledge, it is a failure of response. What makes this history unsettling is how familiar it feels to the modern world. Today's societies face climate stress, resource depletion, population pressure, and deep political polarization. We possess advanced technology and scientific understanding, yet we rely on highly complex systems that are vulnerable to disruption. Supply chains, energy networks, and political institutions can fail rapidly under sustained pressure. Ancient civilizations remind us that complexity without resilience is not strength, it is risk magnified by scale. The most important detail is usually mentioned last or not mentioned at all. Environmental change alone did not destroy these civilizations, despite how often climate is blamed as the sole culprit. What truly ended them was the feedback loop between environmental stress and human decision-making. Nature applied pressure slowly and consistently, testing the limits of agriculture, water systems, and social organization. Human institutions responded by prioritizing stability, tradition, and political survival rather than adaptation. Those responses intensified scarcity, inequality, and unrest. The more pressure nature applied, the more rigid human systems became, until collapse was no longer preventable. When the full truth is understood, these events no longer look like mysterious accidents or unsolvable historical riddles. Instead, they appear as predictable outcomes of societies that failed to adapt quickly enough to changing conditions. Warning signs appeared generations before collapse, but they were often ignored or misinterpreted. Leaders acted within the logic of their time, protecting authority and short-term order rather than long-term resilience. History, in this sense, is not driven solely by conquest, heroism, or morality. It is driven by how humans collectively respond to stress, uncertainty, and loss of control. Ancient civilizations were not doomed because they were ancient or technologically limited. They collapsed because they ignored slow warnings until fast consequences arrived. Gradual environmental shifts were treated as temporary problems rather than structural threats. Social and political systems resisted reform because change felt more dangerous than inaction. By the time collapse was undeniable, options were already gone. That lesson matters now more than ever because modern societies face similar slow-moving pressures with far greater stakes. If you want to understand history beyond surface-level explanations and see how its patterns still shape the modern world, stay with this channel. If you found this breakdown insightful, like and subscribe because the past has far more to teach us than we've been told.